Imagine a future, right, where those high-stakes exams, the ones that kind of define your academic path, aren't done with pencils and paper anymore, but entirely on computers. How would that change things? Fairness, efficiency, how we even learn. It might sound a bit sci-fi, maybe, but for Vietnam, this isn't just, a distant idea. It's actually becoming pretty concrete. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a really significant proposed shift in Vietnam, how they conduct their high school graduation exams. Moving from traditional paper tests to fully computer-based testing, it's a fascinating look at educational modernization.
Yeah, what's happening in Vietnam is definitely a positive signal. I mean, the prime minister actually calling for research into a clear roadmap for computer-based testing, or CBT. Well, that shows a strong reform mindset, doesn't it? There's a clear move to catch up with modern global education trends.
Because CBT isn't exactly new globally, is it?
Not at all. On a global scale, it's already, widely adopted. Think about big international exams. IELTS on computer, TOEFL IBT, the SAT, or even things like Microsoft Office Specialist, MOS, or the ICDL for computer skills.
Right, those are all computer-based now, or have that option.
Exactly. And the key thing about these exams is they're rigorously organized, they're standardized, they have strong systems to validate the results, and these huge, constantly updated question banks behind them. So Vietnam, quite rightly, is recognizing they can't just stand outside this game.
Okay, so if they're stepping into this game, what does it all mean? For their education system, obviously, but maybe for others watching too. So in this deep dive, we're going to explore this proposed three-phase roadmap they've got. We'll get into the advantages CBT offers, the superior advantages, as the source calls them, but also look at the difficulties, the challenges, and sort of what it all means for education moving forward. Now, the source material seems very clear that Vietnam can't just flip a switch overnight, go from paper to computer nationwide. That sounds like it's, chaos.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do they even start something this big? What's the very first step on this roadmap?
You've hit the nail on the head. A phased approach is just crucial. Because, look, this isn't just swapping out paper for screens. It's a whole system overhaul. You're talking technology, infrastructure, people, training, and a huge shift in how students, teachers, even parents think about exams.
Right. It's a cultural shift, too.
Totally. So breaking it down into manageable stages, well, that just makes sense. It lowers the risk, builds confidence along the way. And this proposed three-stage plan seems like a very logical way to progress.
Okay, so let's look at phase one then. This is set for 2025 to 2027. Sounds like it's all about piloting, getting people used to it.
Exactly right. Phase one is designed as a small-scale pilot, and it's specifically in what the source calls standard digital schools.
Okay, so not just any school.
No. Likely schools that already have some decent digital infrastructure, maybe teachers who are already a bit familiar with e-learning. They become these sort of controlled environments for the initial rollout.
Makes sense.
And the focus initially is on subjects that can be, quote, highly objectified. So things where answers are pretty clear-cut. Foreign languages, IT, math, physics, chemistry.
Easier to grade automatically, I guess.
That's part of it, yeah. But it's also strategic. Start with clear-cut answers, iron out the technical kinks in the platform before you tackle more complex subjective assessments. It helps smooth the way for wider acceptance. And crucially, during this phase, students start getting used to CBT. They'll do in-class tests on computers, maybe end-of-term tests. It's about familiarization.
Yeah, that familiarization step seems so important. It's not just about the tech working, it's about the students feeling comfortable, confident with this new way of doing things. It prepares them mentally, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It reduces that test anxiety associated with a totally new format.
Okay, so from that initial controlled pilot, the plan expands. What happens next as we move into phase two, which is 2028 to 2030?
Right. Phase two sees things broaden out. Geographically, they expand to areas, localities that have good IT infrastructure already in place. And what's really interesting here, I think, is they introduce these independent testing centers.
Outside of schools?
Yeah, places where students can actually register and take exams outside their regular school. This adds a layer of flexibility, maybe accessibility, and it starts to decentralize the process a bit.
Okay.
And another really critical development in this phase, the central exam question bank starts operating.
The big database of questions.
Exactly. This is vital for making sure the exams are standardized, consistent, fair, no matter where you take them, managing all that content central.
So phase two is expanding the footprint, adding these external centers, and getting the core content system online. And then we get to phase three. This is after 2030. This sounds like the full rollout.
That's the goal. Nationwide computer-based testing for the high school graduation exams and also for university admissions. The expectation, or the hope, is that by then, most students are comfortable with CBT, the tech infrastructure is solid across the country, and data flows smoothly between different areas.
It sounds like a fully integrated system by then.
Yeah, if we connect it to the bigger picture, this phase really signals a mature, integrated digital education system. And the Ministry of Education Training, MoET, their role shifts.
How so?
They move away from managing the day-to-day logistics of running exams. Instead, they focus more on coordination, supervision, developing the assessment standards, less hands-on, more oversight and strategy.
Interesting. So MoET becomes more like an architect than a site manager, maybe.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It potentially frees them up to think about broader educational policy innovation.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about why. Why go through all this? The source mentions overwhelming advantages of CBT. What are they?
Well, there are quite a few. First off, efficiency. It's just faster, more accurate, and saves a ton on human resources compared to marking paper tests.
Okay, speed and accuracy.
Then there's the grading and results. Scoring is automatic. Results come out quickly. This helps avoid errors, but also potentially any negative practices that could creep into manual marking systems.
Transparency, maybe?
Transparency, exactly. But a really big one, especially for students, is the customization potential. With CBT, each student can get a unique exam code, maybe even slightly different versions of the test drawn from that central bank.
So it makes it harder to cheat, but does it do more than that?
Well, yes, it discourages rote learning, just memorizing answers for one specific test version. It pushes students towards actually understanding the material more deeply. And then there are the logistical benefits. Think about the massive effort involved in printing, securely transporting, storing, and guarding millions of paper exams nationwide. CBT reduces that pressure hugely.
That must be a huge relief for the organizers.
Immense. And it makes the whole system more flexible. Need to run a supplementary exam. Much easier to organize. If a student has a technical issue or gets sick, they could potentially retake it much more easily without waiting months for the next official exam batch.
That flexibility is a big deal for individual students.
It really is. And one more interesting point the source mentions. This format allows students to potentially use AI as a learning support tool during their preparation.
Wait, use AI while studying for these new exams? How does that work?
Well, the source doesn't detail exactly how, but it suggests that the move to digital assessment opens doors to integrating AI tools into the learning process itself, not just the testing. It's quite forward-thinking. It signals a shift in how learning itself might be viewed.
Wow. Okay, those advantages are pretty compelling, especially tackling the logistics and maybe encouraging that deeper learning. But you mentioned fairness earlier. How does CBT really boost fairness beyond just, stopping cheating with unique codes?
Well, the automatic objective scoring is a big part of it. It removes the potential for human bias, conscious or unconscious, in grading subjective answers or even just marking errors on multiple choice. Everyone's script is assessed by the exact same criteria, by the machine.
So consistency.
Consistency, yeah. And the speed of getting results back can reduce anxiety for students and let them make faster decisions about university applications or whatever comes next. That kind of transparency and consistency inherently makes the system feel fairer to most people.
Okay. But like any huge change, it's not all smooth sailing. The source does point out difficulties. What are the main hurdles here?
Right, and it's important to acknowledge them. The biggest one identified is cost. The upfront investment in infrastructure.
Computers, networks, secure rooms.
Exactly. All of that costs money. And equipping potentially every school or creating enough testing centers nationwide is a major expense. However, the source offers a really important perspective on this cost. It argues that you have to see this as an investment for sustainable development, especially if you weigh it against maybe some other expenditures in the education system that the source calls unnecessary. Things like excessive formalities, maybe too many ceremonies, tons of paperwork the current system generates.
So reallocating resources potentially, shifting focus.
Kind of. The idea is to shift the focus from just chasing scores to actually innovating how we assess learning using technology. But cost isn't the only hurdle. There's also the huge task of synchronization and training.
Getting everyone on board and up to speed.
Precisely. You need to train teachers not just how to use the system, but also how to develop good, standardized questions suitable for CBT. That requires professional development. And then there's communication, talking to parents, talking to students, explaining the changes, addressing their concerns, building that social consensus. You need buy-in.
Yeah, that sounds like a massive undertaking in itself, managing the human side of the change, not just the tech.
It really is. It raises that big question. How do you effectively manage such a large-scale shift in mindsets, in established practices across a whole country? It's as much about cultural change as it is about technology.
It certainly is. So if we bring this all together then, the main message coming through from the source seems really clear. This move to computer-based testing isn't just like an option for Vietnam, it's seen as an inevitable direction, right?
Yeah, that's the strong sense you get. It's framed as fundamental to modernizing their education system and helping the country integrate more closely with international standards for assessment.
Because the way you test reflects what you value in education.
Exactly. The source really emphasizes that point.
Mm-hmm.
True educational transformation happens when assessment changes. You change how you measure success, you change the system. And CBT, with its potential for better tech, fairness, transparency, it's seen as the catalyst, the push to get Vietnamese education into what they call a new era. Smart education in the digital age, building a system that's more adaptive, maybe more personalized, and definitely measuring skills relevant for today.
That's a powerful idea. True transformation happens when assessment changes.
Mm-hmm.
So, given this profound shift in how Vietnam plans to measure success and that really intriguing mention of possibly integrating AI as a learning support tool, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How might that ability to use AI not just as some add-on tool, but maybe as a genuine learning partner, how might that revolutionize not just exams, but the whole way we approach learning itself? Could we move beyond traditional teaching to something more adaptive, more personalized, maybe even predictive about what a student needs next? That's something to think about.